He said he was finally debt-free. Said it the way people say it when they mean it, not boasting, just relieved. His HDB was paid up. Both kids were almost through school. And for the first time in nearly 15 years, he could actually see the runway ahead of him. No monthly repayment. No more watching his CPF ordinary account drain into the bank. Just income going somewhere useful for once. Then his wife said she wanted to upgrade. I'm Tracy, and I want to be clear about something before we get into the numbers. This is not a video telling you not to upgrade. I know people who made that move at 45 and came out fine. I also know people, more than a handful, who did the exact same thing and are now 57, still carrying a mortgage, and running the numbers on whether CPF life will cover them if the job disappears in the next few years. The difference between those two groups is not luck and it's not income. It is one set of calculations most people never run before they sign anything. Nobody at the show flat shows you these numbers. The agent does not volunteer them. Your bank's loan officer is focused on what you can borrow, not on what that loan does to your 65-year-old self. This video is about those numbers. Specifically, it's about the Tan couple, a composite built from real figures, real CPF mechanics, and the kinds of calculations that are sitting in your CPF transaction history right now, waiting for someone to look. His wife wanted the condo. He said okay, he sold the flat. And somewhere in that sequence, a number appeared that nobody had shown him at the Shaw flat, a number that moved his retirement by 8 years. We're going to spend this video on that number. All of them, actually. Not his version, yours. Say you have been in your HDB for 18 years. Bought it in your late 20s. Chipped away at the mortgage through 2 kids, 1 car, maybe a parent who needed financial support along the way. And now the mortgage is done. You are 45 and the flat is yours, no bank, no monthly repayment, nothing sitting against it. That is a genuinely powerful position. Most Singaporeans do not stop to appreciate what a paid-up HDB at 45 represents, because they are already mentally in the next flat. The condo lobby, the gym downstairs, the pool the kids can use on weekends. Completely understandable. But a paid-up flat at 45 is one of the most useful financial assets you can be holding, and it is very easy to spend it without realizing exactly what you spent. The Tans were in exactly that position. Flat paid, kids in secondary school, combined household income around $12,000 a month. Good earners, not wealthy, but comfortable. Solid CPF balances from years of contributing. They looked around at their neighbors who had upgraded and decided it was time. Condo in Bishan. $1.2 million. They sold the HDB for $670,000. On paper, that looked like a healthy exit. They had bought for around $400,000, so the nominal gain was $270,000. They were already mentally arranging furniture. What would your own version of this look like? Hold that thought, because the sale price is not the number that ends up mattering. The Tans walked into a mechanic that almost nobody explains at the point of sale. It sits in the CPF Act. It applies to every Singaporean who used their ordinary account to service a mortgage. And when the Tans' numbers came back from that calculation, the gain they thought they had shrunk considerably. When the Tans ran their own numbers on their sale, the surprise was not the price they got. It was what came out of it. $96,000? That is roughly what the Tans lost to CPF accrued interest on a flat they had been paying off for 18 years and thought they fully owned. When you use CPF to pay your mortgage, every dollar you withdraw from your ordinary account goes onto a ledger, not as a neutral withdrawal, as a debt to your own CPF, calculated at the ordinary account interest rate of 2.5% per year, compounded annually. The idea is that the money should have been earning interest in CPF had you not touched it. So when you sell the flat, you refund the full amount, every dollar you withdrew, plus every dollar of interest it would have earned sitting untouched. 18 years of mortgage payments, 2.5%, compounded. The accrued interest alone can be substantial. For the Tans, their total CPF refund, original ordinary account withdrawals plus the accrued interest, came to just under $320,000, which meant their $270,000 nominal gain evaporated, and then some just from that one line. After the CPF refund, agent fees, legal fees, and stamp duty, their actual usable cash from the sale was roughly $194,900. Not $270,000. $194,900. Jail at 2 years of combined savings, gone before they had set foot in a show flat. Now, $194,900 is the TAN's number, not yours. Your accrued interest depends on how long you have held, how much you drew from CPF, your original loan amount, your flat's eventual sale price. Those numbers are all sitting in your CPF transaction history. The Retirement Readiness Score takes your own CPF balance, your own spending, your own target retirement age, and sends you back your own picture of where you stand. Your readiness score, your projected shortfall, if there is one, your runway year by year. It is free, and it is in the description. What is your own accrued interest looking like? Anyone actually run that number? Because most people I ask have not, and it is sitting right there in your CPF portal, under ordinary account transactions, waiting. And that is assuming you sell first. Buy before you sell, and there is a second bill waiting before you have even finished the first one. When you put in an offer on a condo before your HDB is sold, the CPF is not the only clock that starts ticking. The bank has its own opinion about someone who is 45 and wants to borrow for 25 years, and it changes the ceiling on what the bank will approve. That $96,000 refund, it is the first problem. The second one arrives from a completely different direction, and it hits before you even sign the option to purchase. MAS regulations set a maximum loan tenure, and the formula is tied directly to your age. The general ceiling is a loan that runs no longer than until you turn 65 or 70, depending on the type of loan and the lender's rules. At 45, your maximum tenure for a bank loan on a private property typically sits at around 20 to 25 years. 20 years if you want the full 75% loan to value ratio. Stretch to 25 years and the LTV drops to 55%. That is not a small adjustment, it is a cliff. On the TAN's condo at $1.2 million at 75% LTV, they need to bring in $300,000 in cash and CPF for the down payment. At 55% LTV triggered by the longer tenure, they need $540,000. That is $240,000 of extra cash from somewhere because their repayment schedule stretched by 5 years. Most buyers calculate what a monthly repayment feels like and decide whether it fits their income. They do not run the LTV scenario first. The way it usually goes, they fall in love with a unit at $1.2 million. They call the bank. The bank runs the numbers and says your loan is capped at $660,000 instead of $900,000. And suddenly the whole purchase is either off or dependent on cash they did not know they needed to find. The LTV cliff is the part that catches people out, not because it is hidden, but because it only shows up when you have already committed yourself emotionally to a price range. If you are already clear on which tenure bracket you sit in, drop the word trap in the comments and I'll walk you through it. Some buyers try to solve the LTV squeeze by locking in the condo first, so they do not have to scramble after the HDB sells. It sounds sensible. It has its own very specific trap, and it is purely a cash one. 20%. That is the additional buyer's stamp duty rate on a second residential property in Singapore, as things stand. On a $1.5 million condo, that is $300,000. Cash. Due up front before you get the keys. Not rolled into the mortgage. Not deferred, paid in full. The reason some upgraders willingly pay this is the sequence problem. They do not want to sell the HDB, spend months in limbo, and then rush to buy in a market that may have moved against them. So they buy the condo, keep the HDB temporarily, absorb the ABSD, and plan to sell the flat within 6 months to qualify for a refund of the ABSD paid. The refund is real. If you dispose of your first property within 6 months of completing the condo purchase, you get the ABSD back. This is a legitimate pathway that many Singaporeans use successfully. But the 6-month window is not a buffer, it is a countdown. Think about what that timeline looks like from inside the transaction. You list the HDB. First batch of viewings, not much traction. Second batch, one offer comes in, but it is lower than you expected. You counter. They push back. Now you are 10 weeks in and $300,000 is sitting in escrow waiting for you to close. The ABSD refund clock is running, and the TANs, watching that 6-month window from the inside, said it was the most stressful thing they had done with money in their lives. The ABSD window is a ticking clock sitting underneath the entire transaction, and most people only feel its weight once they are halfway through it, when it is too late to restructure. If the HDB sale is delayed, or the CPF refund comes in larger than they expected, or the price they get is softer than the valuation. Any one of those alone changes the picture. All three together, and you have a cash flow problem that a paid-up flat never would have created. Say you clear the ABSD window with time to spare. The bill does not stop there. It just goes quiet and begins compounding every single month. What does it cost every month just to own a condo rather than an HDB? Not the mortgage. Strip the mortgage out entirely and just look at the overhead, the fees that run whether the market is up, whether your income is stable, whether the kids are fine, the fixed cost of the property itself. Your HDB service and conservancy charge, the S&CC, runs between $50 and $90 a month for most flat types. A condo's monthly maintenance fee starts at $300 and regularly goes to $400 or $500 for a mid-range development. Larger or more premium buildings can go higher. Take a conservative gap of $250 a month. That is $3,000 a year in additional overhead before anything breaks. Property tax is also higher on a private property. An owner-occupied HDB pays very little, often under a few $100s annually, sometimes next to nothing at the lower tier annual values. A condo at a comparable annual value sits on a higher tax rate. Add the two items together, and you are looking at an extra $4,000 to $7,000 a year in basic property overhead, depending on the development. Now hold that for 25 years, the length of the TAN's mortgage. Conservative $4,000 a year, no inflation adjustment, is $100,000 over that period. Model it with the actual maintenance fee trajectory of a building that ages alongside you, because maintenance fees do go up as buildings get older and facilities need replacing. And the all-in overhead gap between living in a condo versus staying in the HDB comes to well over $1 million across those 25 years. $1 million, not the purchase price, not the mortgage interest, just the running cost of being in the condo rather than the flat. If you want to see what your own all-in gap looks like, your own spending, your own numbers, not the model version, the retirement readiness score runs that alongside your shortfall and your runway. You put in your figures, you get your own picture back straight away, and it shows you the risks ranked in order. It is in the description. What that $1 million figure does to your CPF life planning is the part nobody flags before you sign, because you are not just paying more each month. You are paying it through your 40s and your 50s, exactly the years when the gap between your savings rate and what you will need at 65 is either closing or widening. Every extra dollar going to maintenance is a dollar not going toward that buffer. And all of that assumes your HDB was only ever a stepping stone. It was not, it had one more job to do for you, and that job only kicks in at 65. No condo equivalent, that is the plain summary of what I am about to describe. The lease buyback scheme exists for HDB owners from age 65. If you have a 3-room flat or smaller, you can sell the tail end of your lease back to HDB, the remaining years beyond what you are statistically likely to live, and receive a cash bonus of up to $30,000 paid directly into your CPF retirement account, which translates into a higher CPF life monthly payout for the rest of your life. For larger flat types, the mechanics are slightly different, and the amounts vary, but the principle is the same. The value locked in the tail of your 99-year lease becomes liquid on government-backed terms without you having to move. It is not a retirement plan on its own. It is not going to rescue someone who has underfunded their CPF for 30 years. But for a 65-year-old couple whose flat is paid up, whose kids have left, and whose CPF life monthly payout is a few $100s short of what they need month to month, the lease buyback top-up can be the margin between managing comfortably and quietly cutting back on everything. A few $100 extra every month for the rest of however long they live. If you are already picturing staying in your flat past 65, aging in place, not moving, the kids can visit and the grandkids can come by on weekends, tell me, is lease buyback even on your radar? Because most of the people I speak to who plan to stay in their flat long-term do not know this option exists. The condo offers nothing equivalent, no scheme, no government-backed mechanism to monetize the tail of your tenure in exchange for a CPF top-up. If you are 65, in a condo, with a mortgage still running, which is the situation the TANs are heading toward, your options for pulling liquidity from the property are entirely private market ones: sell, rent a room, take a private reverse mortgage that carries its own interest cost and its own complexity. None of those have the simplicity, or the CPF integration that the Lease Buyback provides. The mid-career risk matters here too. At 45, when income feels stable and the career looks fine, the HDB's safety net can seem like a conservative instinct you have already outgrown. But the people who get caught, retrenchment at 52, health issue at 55, industry disruption at 58, are almost always the ones who let go of that safety net at exactly the moment life felt most secure. So is the upgrade always the trap the title says? Not always. And here is exactly where the line sits. You're thinking, Tracy, plenty of people upgrade at 45 and retire fine. You are right. They do. The ones who come out well are not luckier, and they are not necessarily higher earners. The difference is one specific check they ran before committing, and it produced a number that told them whether their particular upgrade, at their particular age, at their particular price point, fits their retirement math. The check is this: does your mortgage clear before CPF life starts? That is it. That is the single most clarifying number in the whole decision. Not the valuation gain, not the square footage, not whether the development has a 50-meter lap pool. The mortgage clear date against the CPF life start date. If the mortgage clears at 63, you have 2 years of zero repayment before your CPF life payout kicks in. That gap is manageable, you save more aggressively in those 2 years, and CPF life starts clean with no debt running alongside it. If the mortgage clears at 68, you are 3 years into CPF life payouts while still servicing debt. CPF life was never sized to run in parallel with a home loan. The monthly payout is designed to supplement retirement income, not to cover it while a mortgage is still drawing down your cash. The TANs on their original plan would have cleared the mortgage at 67, 2 years after CPF life was supposed to start. That is the trap, not the upgrade itself. The financing timeline. The upgraders who come out fine typically share a few things. The mortgage clears by 65 at the latest. The CPF refund was sized in before the sale, not discovered after. The ABSD either did not apply or was covered by cash they had set aside for the purpose. And the monthly condo overhead, maintenance, property tax, all of it, still left room for the savings rate they needed to hit their retirement number. Those are the questions. Not, can I afford the monthly repayment today? That is the easy question and the one everyone answers. The harder one is whether the timeline still works at 65, at a level of income that might be lower than today, against obligations that have not gone away. The upgrade is not inherently the trap. Running the timeline without checking the finish line is. Which means the real question is not whether you can afford the condo. It is whether you have checked. If you want to see which side of that line your own numbers sit on, your CPF life payout estimate, your runway, your own readiness score, that is exactly what the retirement readiness score gives you back. It is free. It is in the description.